probably come to you. Okay, coming down, watch your fingers. Perfect. Last two pieces. Good stuff. Shoes are installed. We have a little bit of drilling left to do. We've got to drill out the electrical chase holes. We'll do that with the whole hog. That doesn't have to be done until the panels are basically ready to go up. So I'm not going to worry about that at the moment. We've got some bigger fish to fry. We need to get the floor built over the loft here. We're just going to throw up a stick frame temporary floor with 2x8s. And that way we can get up there to do the furring strips on both ends. And then we also need those flooring pieces up there for the roof installation. So that's probably a good next project. We also need to get the timber braces drilled and pegged. Those are just kind of prep things for panel prep. So I counted our plywood inventory. We've got one sheet here, and what I'm thinking is we can probably put a couple of sheets right here, and that'll allow us to put a ladder there, and then we can get up to take that big brace down. And then what we need to ultimately do is put up enough plywood that we can ladder all the way across the end here. We don't have that plywood on hand, so we'll have to kind of improvise. This whole thing actually needs to be covered in plywood so that we can move ladders freely. Our plan is to use the sheeting that we're going to use for our secondary roof to do that. So that probably won't happen today, but we can at least get some plywood up here and get that brace down. That way we can work on furring strips. We feel like this wall, because we're going up a story, is like really intimidating, and we're going to be working with the crane, so there's a lot of, feels like minutia, where I think we wish we were just working on panel prep, but like there's so much preparing a work surface and all the other stuff that goes into getting this thing ready so we can just put screws in panels. When we put the frame up, we made a decision not to put the floor joist over the living room and over the dining room. We thought, well, we don't really know how we're going to use the loft, but we like the idea of having an open cathedral ceiling. But we're about to find out whether we made a good decision or bad, because we're going to build a floor over both of those. It'll be kind of interesting to see how small everything feels once we get a ceiling on the living room at, I think it's 10 feet, something like that. What do you think? Do you regret not putting a ceiling in the living room?
I don't think so.
Looks different, doesn't it? Wait till we put plywood on it.
I think it would make the house feel a lot more cramped.
I wonder.
It totally changes the mood of the house though. With the
It does, look at that. So what you're saying is you don't want a pergola in the living room?
No.
10-4. That went really good. So we're gonna knock out some lumber and get the second guy put together. And then we'll have to just scrounge up whatever plywood we have and try to get it installed on this portion of that floor. And then maybe just give the floor a test and kind of see how it feels. If anybody out there has ever not done engineering, what you might not know about how things are engineered is, especially floors, is they're not engineered for failure. They're engineered for deflection. Very different engineering concept. So this 2x8 floor, 2 feet on center, spanning 12 feet, actually, excuse me, 11 feet, important, unsupported, but with the floor joist bearing 4 inches on one side and 3 inches on the other side, should easily support, with minimal deflection, a man and a ladder. But don't put our unit of flooring up there, okay? Those who have been following us for a little while might recognize these floor joists, these dark ones, 1, 2, 3, 4. Where'd those come from?
Our concrete forms.
Those were our footing forms.
Our footing forms.
Wow. Isn't that exciting? So now those pieces of lumber are actually on their third life.
Wow.
3. We used them during the timber framing process to reinforce. So the braces that are actually supporting that king post up there are also our footing forms. So far, we're doing a great job of reusing and recycling our lumber. And I think there's good chance that those will end up becoming studs in one of our interior walls.
Yep.
There's a high chance.
The final position.
You okay? Alright, we got the framework up for the floors. We are burning up. It is hot today.
It's warm.
So I think we're going to take a short breather in the garage, get some water, cool down for a little bit. We'll regroup and kind of figure out where to go from here. Well, Alyssa thought ahead and made us some wonderful smoothies, which she kept in the freezer, I think. Wonderful this time of day. Thank you, love, for doing that. So we need to get these timber braces pegged and drilled. Since it's in the shade right now and we're just struggling with the heat today, we're gonna stick around in here and try to get that part of this project prepped. It's actually quite a bit of planning that needs to go into getting these done. So the way that these vertical pieces attach to the SIP is we've got these 14-inch timber lags that go through the SIP panel and into the post, if you will. But we, at the peak, not at the eave pieces, but at the ridge pieces, there's actually 2 all threads that go through the post, through the SIP, and then through the ridge post. So there's a post here, a SIP here, and then the exterior post. We've got to make sure that those holes are drilled because one of them goes in here. And there's just no way you're going to get a drill in here later to get a hole. And then we're going to put 1.25 inch hole there too for the dowel that we're going to use to kind of cover up the hardware that's hidden behind there for visual purposes. For some reason, I think I'm just really hot, but thinking this stuff through, it's not clear to me how exactly we're gonna do that. Let's kind of look at the plans for a second. Okay, so this is showing one of the ridge pieces that goes at the peak of the roof. And you can see that there is 3 rows of timber lags, and there's 2 per row. So that's actually 6 lags. And then we have this all thread that goes through the ridge post and through the brace. And it's this all thread right here that we've got to think ahead to, because you're just not going to get a drill in here after the fact. So it looks like 4 inches down from where the ridge piece sits, we should be drilling that hole. And I believe it's an 1.25 inch hole all the way. And then we've bought an oak dowel that we're going to cut to length, and we'll actually slip in there after it's all installed, and that'll make it look like it's pegged. Of course, we've got it all threaded in there. We had a local fabrication shop. Actually, we went through their boneyard, and we found a bunch of scrap steel. We found some angle iron. So instead of buying a bracket, we actually just found some angle iron, and we had them cut it. So we actually need to get that painted. Yeah, so we need to get that bracket painted today so that it's dry and ready to install. So we've got a lot of work to do on these braces just to get them ready to install on the SIP. So these are the crusty old steel, angle iron steel brackets that we had made. Basically, we just pulled them out of the boneyard and then just had them drill some holes in them for us really quick. And I guess we didn't plan far enough ahead. We thought, well, let's just put the holes in the center, and that seemed fine, but we're kind of realizing now that there was maybe a little more planning needed there. So these brackets will sit on top of the ridge beam, and they will fasten down into the ridge beam, and then they're going to all thread bolt through the rafter, through the SIP, and then through that post on the brace or the bracket. We're going to go up and do some kind of preliminary measuring. We've done some according to the plans measuring, but we want to make sure that this is going to actually work out the way we think it's going to work out. And then we did some measuring and thinking here. As long as that hole comes out somewhere between 3 and 5 inches from the top of this post, we think we can get the drill in here after the fact and drill an 1.25 inch hole to allow the washer and the oak peg and everything to do its job. So that means less work now, but we need to make sure when we go up there that we double check the measurements and that everything's gonna kind of fit the way we think it's gonna fit. To add insult to injury, we have, at the advice of Shelter, had our SIP company reduce each panel to panel connection by 1 inch. So our wall panels are actually going to be held off from the roof 1 inch. And that just gives us a little bit of play in case there's some issue with the skins, which we have dealt with so far. The problem is we want the brackets to actually be flush with the roof, but the panels aren't going to be flush with the roof. So we're gonna have to do some measuring and make sure that when we mount these brackets to the SIP that they're in the right place, so when it goes up, they actually match the pitch or the peak of the rafters at the top. Get all that? Yeah, we're trying to do all that in the heat. Not a very good idea, I don't think. And we have our oak pegs. So these are what we will actually peg these brackets together with. And we got them from Shelter because they have them and we like them. I think we should test fit one of those pegs to our drill bit and just make sure it fits the way we think it's going
just
to.
do a sample piece of wood maybe?
Yeah, so there's a technique in timber framing called draw boring where you actually offset the two holes, right? And I don't know that we need to do that because we don't really need to suck these joints completely tight. In theory, the timbers are still wet, quite wet, and they'll dry over time and they'll shrink around that oak peg, which is much harder than the larch and fir we use. So I think we're good, but wouldn't it be a disaster if we drilled them all out and the pegs are a little small?
It's cheap to test it.
Cheap. So let's start there. Let's make some sawdust.
It's big.
You think it's long enough?
Maybe.
Do a very good job scoring the wood there. Could be just where I started drilling, but it's gonna tear out.
Yeah.
So maybe, I don't know, we might want to put a piece of tape or something before we start drilling. That way it doesn't tear out so bad.
Or go faster?
It just has to do with the drill bit. It doesn't have, if you look closely,
like
it doesn't have, no, there's like a little kind of, I don't know, scoring thing on there that usually scores the grain, and this one doesn't have it. This is just like a straight up auger.
It's tight.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I think it's okay. I don't think we need to do anything special. But yeah, I think that's pretty tight. In fact, we may have to pound them in. You know, so I think we're okay as long as the joint's as tight as we want it to be and all's good.
That's pretty good.
Now it's starting to look like a timber frame.
Yeah,
Got
man.
the
How many
pegs.
months ago did we make our last video where we're finishing this project? Like 2 months ago.
Long time. Oh yeah, that'll do. For those folks who may not know, you want your pegs to be super, super dry so that they will not shrink. But the timber is wet, so it will shrink. So over time, this peg will get so tight that you will have to drill it to remove it. Right now, Alyssa was able just to tap it in with a mallet and a block of wood. So that's why you don't need any glue or anything. As this dries, it's gonna suck tight to this peg and it's never coming out. That's not just textbook knowledge. I tested it up in our frame. Those pegs in the frame, wow, they're not going anywhere. I just like banged on it with a hammer. It's like ping, 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 ping. I'm like, seems solid to me. 10 3/4. Call it 11.
Okay.
Put it at 5.5.
There. Go 1.5 inches in. There.
So we're dealing with a couple of different tenon sizes. These tenons, which are on the post, are 5 inches long and 4 inches wide. And it's important that we remembered that this tenon is actually away from the house. So the house is down here, and 4 inches out, this tenon starts, and then it goes to the end. So we almost drilled through here for our first peg. We finally realized it, and we managed to drill through the tenon. So we saved our bacon on that one. This tenon is super wide, but it's only 3 inches deep. So we only have a very narrow window to get a 3/4 inch peg through that tenon. We decided to ratchet strap this thing together to make sure that everything's nice and taut when we're pegging it. It's just hard to hold it all still while you're drilling. And there's that fear that if you peg it loosey-goosey, well, it'll be loosey-goosey the rest of its life. All right.
We also...
Oh yeah. Yeah, so these little wings right here, this is a true bit and brace designed for timber framing. And these little wings actually sever the grain, and then up here, the bit starts cutting. Whereas this bit just goes straight to cutting, and we're getting tear out. So we're actually starting the hole with a bit and brace, and then once we kind of got about an inch or so, we're going in with this auger to finish the cut. This thing makes such clean holes, it's beautiful. You're using my grandpa's tool.
Hey, Grandpa.
Look at that. Oh, it's so beautiful. Look at how clean that is. Oh, so beautiful.
Good. See why Gramps had this.
Go Gramps.
Think that's good enough?
I go in about an inch. There you go.
That's pretty good.
Oof. Wow. See the difference?
Some of you were coming my way.
We couldn't figure out why the stinking brace wouldn't move for the bracket. Because we put pegs in it. Silly gooses. All right.
Do you want to hold this and I'll try drilling?
Sounds good.
Jiggling my everything. Like
Yep.
dig, 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 dig. Do you want to do the honors?
Heck yeah.
That's pretty good.
Wow.
it, guys. We are officially done with our roof braces. I think more than we're excited to have this project completed, we're excited to have this space back in the front of the garage. On to the next project.
Right.
We still have a couple hours of daylight. Do you want to put those outside, maybe? I think we could put it with the other brace stock material.
Yeah, where is that at? Over at the sawmill?
No, I think it's by the large beams.
Yeah, I'll go on this side. Go up, 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 up. Okay. Where are you at there? Right.
Well, we spared you guys the details, but remember those long, dangly braces hanging from the north and the south peaks of the roof? Yeah, we just got them down. And that earns us a really big dinner, I'll just say that. We've been up since 5:30 and it's clearly past 8, so I think it's time to call it a night.
We gave her hell today, that's for sure. We got a lot of work done. A lot of big tasks that have been on the to-do list for months, so.
So when we get to prepping panels, it'll go very quickly.
Yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit while we're having a smoothie earlier, breakfast. We're gonna kind of work with the crane, and he has a busy schedule and we're not quite ready, so we'll have to just see. We're thinking if we can't get panels ready by Tuesday morning, maybe the crane can come in the afternoon and we can get whatever we have ready installed, and then maybe give ourselves until the weekend to get the rest of it ready. By then our roof should be here and we should have an army of people, so hopefully at that point we can start doing the roof. If not, we'll do it next week.
Guess you have to stick around and find out.
Let's see.